We know that some of you out there are having watch parties. We'd love to see a photo of your group, so please post that as well. When you're posting, please use the hashtag Goodness Pays. The hashtag Goodness Pays on your favorite social media platform. So this is all going to help us share what you're learning throughout the program and from the speaker, and contribute to the research that we're gathering on the impact of good leadership. So we're really just asking you to help us give social media a double shot of goodness this morning. And something to get started, I mentioned that I will be walking you through some polls, and we actually have the first one live and ready for you. So those of you in our live audience, you can access that poll through your program. There's a URL and a QR code. And for those of you watching online, there should be a link below the video on the live stream landing page. We want to know who's participating today. Are you a young, aspiring leader, or an established leader, or maybe you don't know yet? Please jump in to that poll and start engaging with us right away. We will take a look at those results later on in the broadcast, which will be starting right now.
Most people agree the difference between surviving and thriving in business today is good leadership. But what exactly is good leadership? Good leadership is the art and science of people working together to create great results. You see it when leaders with good character multiply their impact with proven success habits. Great results happen when people work together and create a positive impact on their customers, colleagues, and their communities. Good Leadership is also a game-changing consulting firm headquartered in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Unlike other firms who coach individuals, Good Leadership coaches teams to exceed their goals, both personally and professionally. The firm's mission is to spread the idea goodness pays. What's goodness? Goodness in business is when people thrive together in a culture of encouragement, accountability, and positive teamwork. Good leadership coaches accelerate alignment in teams during disruptive changes in the business. And they bring out the goodness in people with a proven process called the Goodness Pays Leadership System. It's worth your time to learn more, because leading with goodness is confirmed by research to produce better business results. The secret is here in this exceptional book, How Goodness Pays. So if you want to explore new ways to produce better results faster, visit goodleadership.com. Watch for a goodness dinner near you, or get tickets to a Good Leadership Breakfast series. It's an exciting workshop held only in Minneapolis 8 times a year.
The CEO of Good Leadership and the creator of the Good Leadership Breakfast series, Paul Botts.
Thank you, Bo. This is so exciting. I haven't worn this suit since February. And it's awesome to get our friends together. For those of you online, we have a small studio audience. Everyone is wearing masks. We're practicing good social distancing. We didn't serve any breakfast today. But we're really grateful to be in this fantastic facility, the Performing Arts Center at Providence Academy in suburban Minneapolis. It's an awesome day. By now, you know we're using our devices here to help us run the meeting, and I want to show you who is on the audience. So can we take a look at what the poll results have been? Okay, well, it's a good thing that we have some young aspiring leaders here, because this is the Young Leader Breakfast. So congratulations, thank you very much, and I know we have some established leaders that we have a few things we can share with, and what I really love about this slide is the don't know yets. That's good intellectual honesty, and we can work with that. The mission of the Good Leadership Breakfast is to spread goodness, because we've proven through our research and programs like this that goodness pays. And probably what I need to do right now is to just state the obvious. The world is changing. I travel a lot on business, on airplanes. And up until February, that was the case. And in middle of February, I came home from a trip from Los Angeles, and I was really, really sick. Some of you know that. Was it COVID? I'm not really sure. Back then, when I asked for a test, they didn't even have any. All I know is I flew through LAX 3 times in 11 days, and when I got home, I was so sick I couldn't work for 2 solid weeks. It got my attention without a doubt. In addition to that, think of everything that's changed since then. We're learning now how to live with masks, not me up here, but you there. We're learning what it means to social distance. We're learning what it's like to work and also go to school at home over the internet. We're also learning that when you eat comfort food every day, you're going to actually gain some weight. But it's fascinating how, as the world changes around us, we're really starting to search for what the new normal is. And then in the middle of that, 4 months ago, the events around Memorial Day that just absolutely shocked us to the core related to George Floyd. I mean, the world is changing. What I'd like to do now is to ask you to use your device again. We have another survey. Bo, can you take this in here? The survey here is, do you think the world's changing for better or for worse? Bo?
Yes, that survey is live for you. That poll is live for you now. Again, in the context of what Paul just mentioned, do you feel that things are changing for the better or worse? We're going to give you 30 seconds to engage with that poll.
Wow. About as many people saying worse as many people saying better. You know what? That's intellectually honest. We're all processing how it is that we feel about this. It would also be interesting, we can't do that now, but we will do that later. We can cut this data to find out which of you, the established leaders, the young leaders, or the don't know yets, are saying this kind of information. That's really, really helpful. We appreciate you playing along. We're going to send this information back to you following the meeting. So, we mentioned earlier that we're broadcasting from Minneapolis, Minnesota. The brand of Minneapolis specifically changed a lot about 4 months ago. We were this cute metropolitan area that was really proud of our cultural arts, and we got wonderful lakes and parks and all that sort of stuff that goes on, and we have fantastic world-class sporting events as well. And then the tragic events related to George Floyd, literally the murder on the streets, caused anarchy. Our city was burning on the national news for about 4 days. And now what we're learning to do is to live with the idea that this is the epicenter of the movement to try to end systemic injustice based on race. And we're learning to live with that. We're trying to figure out what is that new normal. So the meeting today is all for young leaders. We're trying to help young leaders understand what's going on, understand good leadership, understand how goodness pays, and carve a better path forward than, frankly, we did. And we think this is important work. So we're really grateful that you're part of this. It's at this point in time I want to mention some people that were really powerful in encouraging us to figure out a way to get this meeting done. First is our presenting sponsor at TCF, and it's Mike Jones. Mike Jones is a remarkable leader. And he encouraged me through this confusion to figure out a way to produce what he called the mother of all Zoom meetings. And so you're all part of that today. Let's hear a message from one of his colleagues and a really good friend of our firm, Sheila Posthumus.
So the reason TCF is choosing to sponsor the Young Leader Breakfast is because goodness is tied to everything that we do. We believe in strong communities, strong businesses, strong individuals, and you can't have any of that without goodness. I think that young leaders have an opportunity to look at the world through a different lens. And the concept of goodness is something that they should believe and that they should strive for as they pursue anything in life. We are so proud, excited, and honored to help young leaders carve a better path forward.
A life mentor for me, Jay Allen, is here today. He all along believed that we should do some programming once a year that was aimed specifically at young leaders. Now, we've been doing this breakfast for 10 and a half years. This is our 84th meeting. It was Jay's idea for us to focus on young leaders. Let's hear from Jay.
Hello, young leaders. During the past 2 years, my teenage grandson and I have been challenging each other to notice more things. We share what we notice. We comment on what we did not notice. Together, we are building a generational awareness muscle. It's really great, and it's a lot of fun. I'm Jay Allen, founder of Masters Alliance Consultancy and the Masters Alliance Young Leaders Movement. With Paul Botts, we are honored to have TCF Bank as our sponsor. In my work with over 2,200 senior leaders and their direct reports in 20 industries in 13 countries, I've learned that the burden of regret is so much greater than the risk of leading. We remember when we did not lead, and we remember the reward of leading. So my hope for you is for you to notice, step up, take a chance, and lead with no regret. The risk is unimportant, and the experiences are so important. Make this day count.
We also have 3 other sponsors we want to mention here today. Our friends at Twin Cities Orthopedics, who are our presenting sponsor for the entire series. Also Twin Cities Business, who's our media sponsor. And Lockton, who's underwriting all the research that we do here. We can't do it without you. We're so grateful. So if we take up Jay's challenge to notice things, I think the question for today is, where do we see the goodness in all this? Recognizing that about half of us are in the mindset that we might be changing for the worse. That's a really, really powerful question. I believe we can find goodness in anything, and you're going to hear that over and over and over today. But for those of you who've been to the breakfast a number of times over the years, some of these themes will be familiar today. But we have so many people who are brand new to us from all over the country that we're going to revisit some of this basic information that good leadership is based on. And the first thing is, where did our fascination with goodness come from? So, everyone has a special relationship with their grandmother. I was no different. I had a wonderful relationship with my grandmother. My grandmother was also an extraordinary human being. She lived into 103. She was an opera singer in the 1920s. She was a music teacher for over 45 years. She was an author and a scholar. And she was, physically, when she started to age, at age 89, she was the oldest living human being recorded by the Mayo Clinic to survive a triple heart bypass surgery, heart surgery. And after that, she went back to playing the piano with veracity. And she played the organ in the church until she was 95 when they took her car keys away. So on the day that she died, she called me at 7:15 in the morning and said, "Hey, this was 2009, in the middle of the Great Recession." She said, "I know this is a really difficult time to be in business and to run a family." And she said, "I'm calling you because I've had a really good life, and I'm tired, and I have a message for you." She said, "You are a good man, and the world needs good men like you to spread goodness." And she said, "That's it. I love you. Goodbye." So I walked around with that in my head for about 4 months. I didn't even have the courage to admit to my wife what my grandmother said to me. And it became really, really clear as we watched the economy continue to go down. I started to talk about goodness with my clients. And it became really clear that in order to do that in the way I wanted to do it, I had to start my own firm. I did that on November 1st, 2009. In January of 2010, in the dead of winter, we gathered a bunch of clients together and friends to talk about this idea. Do you still believe goodness pays? Some of you in the room were there that day. And what that discussion ended up being was a really stimulating conversation where people saying, "Hey, we got to do this again." So here we are, 84 meetings later. That was the beginning of what we call the Good Leadership Breakfast Series. I'm really sorry we didn't serve you any breakfast today. But I'm really grateful that a small group of us found the courage to get together and continue this conversation. So now it's time to bring Bo back in. Bo's job is to whip up the buzz about goodness. So what's going on out there?
Yeah, first I want to share that we have people watching from on our live Island, Virginia, Florida, Texas, California, Arizona, Wisconsin, and of course Minnesota, and several other states. In fact, the live stream audience equals 34% of the states in the U.S. representing them. So that's great.
That's great.
A quick note about some of the folks watching. We understand that the principal at the in St. James, Minnesota, southern Minnesota, organized a watch party with 40 high-achieving young leaders. And so a little small world moment here. That's my hometown. That's where I was born. So kind of cool to see that. Yeah, that's awesome.
And that's Carla that I went to college with at Gustavus who organized that. That's awesome.
Even smaller world. And then just summary, overall, there's all kinds of buzz and excitement around the fact that the breakfast is back and happening again, both in a live setting and virtual. So kudos to that.
Thank you.
You bet.
Awesome. I'm sure there were a few football references in there too, weren't there?
It might have been.
Yeah, that's right. Okay. Okay, so we have a couple of more polls to go forward with, okay? So let's get ready for our next poll. The poll is, have you been encouraged to look for the goodness in all this? Go ahead, Bo.
Yep, that poll is active. And again, we're just wondering, has anyone encouraged you to see or find the goodness in the midst of all of this? Again, we're going to give you 30 seconds. There's a bit of a delay for our live stream audience, so we want to give them enough time to participate. So we'll check in 30 seconds. Wonderful.
So the message is really clear. We're encouraging each other to look for the goodness. We might not all be seeing it. So we have another question that goes right along with this. The next slide has that on there. So because of all of this, do you feel a more or less responsibility to be a positive force for changing the world? 3 choices here, more or less or not sure. Go ahead.
That poll is active by now. You know the drill. So you should see that on your device, and please engage with that. We'll give it another 30 seconds for everyone to participate. Thank you. All right. Again, let's take a look at those results.
Well, that's heartening to see. So we have a group of people who we're not sure if the world's changing for better or worse. We're looking for the goodness in all this, and it's motivating us to step up and make positive changes in the world. I think that's all that we can expect in order to set the stage for a conversation about good leadership and goodness. So it's probably worth asking the question, what do we mean by goodness? Here's where I'm super proud of talking about the fact that we learned about 7 years ago that we were the only firm out there that was putting this message into the world, and we hadn't done any research yet. So I'm grateful to my relationships I had with U.S. Bank and with Cargill, who helped underwrite a pretty significant research project that resulted in the How Goodness Pays book that's up here. And so everything we're doing here is based on the research that we got there, and probably the most important thing we did was to land on a definition that allowed us to have this conversation without people getting weird about the word goodness. So the definition here is when people thrive together in a culture of encouragement, accountability, and positive teamwork. Now, so anybody who does any kind of research, and also business thinkers about outcomes, you can say, well, what does thrive together mean? Thrive together means that everybody wins. The employees win, the executives win, the customers win, the shareholders win, the community wins. That's what thrive together means. And we've learned now that there's economic value in the concepts of encouragement, accountability, and positive teamwork. And if you're wondering how does that work, let me play it back to you. So if you've got an organization that doesn't have positive teamwork, has very little accountability, and people don't encourage each other, that's not a very good enterprise, is it? So everything we do is set up to help you find a way to bring those things alive. That's what we call goodness, and that's how goodness pays. We also asked people, when you describe to us, yep, I work for a leader who represents goodness. They radiate goodness. We say, well, what does that mean? What do you see? And we found out there are 4 underlying values. We call them cornerstones. That if you build your leadership off of these values, excellence, generosity, fairness, and positivity, that you have a good chance of being a good leader, that goodness pays for you. More specifically, they told us that they're people that live generously, people that reward excellence, people that promote fairness and spread positivity. So when we continued the chain of research, one of the things we figured out, we asked people, what is the easiest of these 4 concepts for you to see in the leaders that are around you every day? And the answer to that is excellence. So you told us it's easiest to see excellence in the leaders that you see around you. That begs the opposite question. So what's the most difficult thing, or the thing we see the least? We have a poll question about that. We want to ask you that question. So which of these cornerstones do you see the least today? Maybe you see excellence the least. We'll find that out. Let's go to the poll. Bo?
That question is live and ready for you. You should see it on your devices. Please interact with that. Give us the answer on which of the cornerstones do you see the least today. Once again, 30 seconds.
We suspected this in the 5 years of doing this research around this, what we learned before George Floyd was what people saw least was positivity. Today is the first time that we've ever polled an audience where fairness is the number one answer. I think that helps frame up what we're trying to do here today. What we've learned, though, in the context of goodness and how it pays, that the most catalytic of these four values is positivity. In other words, if you reward excellence, if you live generously and you promote fairness, those are really good things. But if in the moment of truth, when you're stressed and pressured, you go negative and create a toxic environment, it can undo all the other three, just like that. And we think that's really, really important, positivity, because of this thing that we've noticed lately that we call the dark noise. The dark noise is the declining trust that we have in society in general. The research is really, really clear. There's an organization I follow very regularly called the Pew Center for Research, and they've been telling us consistently that as Americans, we're losing trust in the four institutions that not very long ago tied us all together. They are government, big business, organized religion, and the media. And the media in particular is really responsible for, both formal and social media, for this kind of darkness that we feel. It's this constant flow of political bickering, natural disasters, and just general sense of wrongdoing that we're doing with each other. And over time, it just starts to really wear on us. So one of the things we've discovered in the very early stages of this is this concept called the 7 F's. And the 7 F's are up here on this banner here. The 7 F's are faith, family, finances, fitness, friends, fun, and future. That if you live a life that's satisfying on all those 7 F's as a leader, it helps you stay positive and push back the dark noise. So many of you have done this exercise before. Most of you have never done this before. On your table handout, I hope those of you online either got access to this or downloaded it. It's also available. There's a QR code in the materials. You can find the 7F's wheel if you go to goodleadership.com/7-FS-wheel. It's all there.
Yep.
If you've got a pen with you, we gave you one in your bags here in the studio audience. It's also okay if you just do a mental assessment on the 7F's wheel. Here's how this tool works. This helps us determine how these forces are flowing through our lives. The 7F's wheel has a spoke for every one of the 7 F's. Faith is at the beginning, future's at the end, fitness is in the middle. Each spoke has a number, 1 through 10. 1 means it couldn't be any worse for me right now. 10 means it couldn't be any better. I'm just going to give you a really quick definition. If you have your pen or if you're using this online, just go ahead and make a selection. We start with faith. But I'm not asking you, do you worship, who you worship, why or why not? That's really none of my business. But what I am asking you to do is to consider what the ancient Chinese and the Egyptians figured out 4,000 years ago. The strongest leaders had a really strong connection between mind, body, and spirit. Faith is the spirit. So how satisfied are you with your spiritual life? 1 through 10. Family. We've spent a lot of time with our families lately, haven't we? I'm not sure what that's going to do to your score, but how satisfied are you with your family life? 1 means couldn't be worse, 10 means it couldn't be any better. So faith, family, then finances. It's not about how much money you have in your pocket or your portfolio. It's how well does your money fund your priorities. After finances, it's fitness. It's okay to chuckle here. Fitness is the health of our body. How satisfied are we with that? I've been eating a lot of comfort food and drinking a lot of nice wine. Friends, these are the people who share our joys and disappointments. Give yourself a score, 1 through 10 on friends. After friends is fun. It's the part of our life that's playful and joyful. Here in Minnesota, we get to spend a lot of time outside in the summertime. It adds to our fun. And future is the last one. Future is the hope that we have for ourselves and others. So I hope you did this exercise. I hope you circled one of the numbers and then do the kindergarten exercise and connect the dots on your wheel. And if this is the first time you've done this exercise, watch the shape that you're about to create. And those of you who've done this many times before, compare it to what it used to look like in your head. Because the idea here is that we create a 7S wheel that rolls. And that's not easy. It's fair if you gave yourself all 2s, it would roll. But the wheel is the symbol of momentum in physics. A wide open wheel creates its own energy. And we think focusing daily on where you're at on each of the 7Fs helps you be a better leader. It helps you bring a more positive spirit that people want to be a part of, and it helps you push back the dark noise. Now, I'm going to make a transition to our favorite ritual that we have here at the Good Leadership Breakfast. It's a fundraising technique. And as long as you're using your phones, you can donate online. We'd really appreciate it. This thing is called the Handy Paint Pail in their local hardware store. Around here, we call it the Bucket of Goodwill. The inventor of this thing spoke at the Good Leadership Breakfast in year 2. And ever since then, he and I have been working together. He's been matching the donations, and we're nearly at $350,000 so far. So we're encouraging you to go online. You can also use the QR code on your handout here. If you just go ahead and take a picture of it right here, it'll send you there. And you get a chance to choose then. Who are you? You get to vote as to where we're going to send the dollars. Mark will match the amount we raised today, and we're going to either send it to Feeding America or the Southern Poverty Law Center that's really dedicated to help ending systemic injustice. So I'm going to give you just a couple of seconds. We'll play some happy music again, and I'll be back with Kevin Warren here in just a second. Thank you very much for being here. Okay, we'll be tabulating the contributions during the meeting, and we'll come back in about 25 minutes and tell you how much we've raised. So here's the sports page from the Minneapolis Star-Tribune today. On the front cover, below the fold, is a picture of our speaker today. I met Kevin Warren more than 5 years ago. Because of this breakfast, we've always had an editorial group that's helped us figure out who would be a good speaker, and it's been really important to me to present a multicultural mosaic of speakers, people first half career, second half, men, women, people of color, people who have different ways of making a living. And so I was told, call Kevin Warren. They gave me his contact information, and immediately I called Kevin Warren, and guess what? He answered the phone. You remember those days when people used to answer the phone? And we had a really intense chat that lasted less than 3 minutes. And when I told him what I do and what we wanted him to do, he said, yep, I'll do that. And after he spoke at the Good Leadership Breakfast the first time, he became a coaching client. And the two of us together have been through all sorts of interesting things, including building the U.S. Bank Stadium, including hosting the Super Bowl, including building what I consider to be the Taj Mahal of professional athletic facilities, the TCO Performance Center, and then recently, the move from the NFL to the Big Ten. The speaker I'm going to introduce you to now is a husband and a father and a man of deep faith. He's a philanthropist, he's ever present in the community, and he's ever present in the news. So please join me in welcoming a very charming and actually controversial leader at the moment, Kevin Warren. Good job. It's okay.
All right, good morning, Paul. Thank you for the introduction, and it's needless to say, and that's all I'll say about it, is it's been an interesting 10 days. But, you know, as you live your life and live your journey and get an opportunity to look back over your life, you know, one of the things I really believe that Coach Jim Valvano and I got a chance to watch some of the reruns on ESPN because we haven't had much live sports lately, but I saw his speech that he gave at the ESPYs when he talked about, you know, a great day is when you can really think, laugh, and cry. So I can guarantee, hopefully, that we'll have 2 of those today, that I'll say some things that'll cause you to think, and hopefully, maybe not cause you to cry, but they'll cause me to cry, because I'm an incredibly emotional person, and I don't mind showing it. And maybe we'll have something that will cause you to laugh a little bit. I haven't had much to laugh about the last 10 days, but that's the journey we're on right now. So I'm going to go back, because I'm sensitive to our time, to just tell a story, a little bit of my background. I was born in Phoenix, Arizona, the youngest of 7 kids, loving parents, tough parents, demanding parents, not a lot of family resources, but a lot of direction. And we moved to Tempe, Arizona, a nice suburb in Tempe, kind of near the university, Arizona State University. And we had moved from an all-black neighborhood where I had spent the first 10 years of my life to really a mixed neighborhood. And I remember one of the worst, and probably the only real spanking, I guess it's okay for me to say that still nowadays, that I received from my dad. My mom was the one who doled out most of the discipline, but the real spanking I remember from my dad is that we had moved from this black enclave to a mixed neighborhood, and I went to fish with some friends and failed to tell him where I was going, and came back after dark, and he put it on me. And he put it on me because he was scared. And then I recognized that we lived in a little different neighborhood, because he never would have done that in our old neighborhood. But it was a beautiful, sunny day, almost like today, in Phoenix, middle of June. I was 10 and a half years old. And I went out for a bike ride to go to, actually up to the high school, where I would eventually go to high school. But was riding my bike there to meet some friends, to play some football and basketball. Those are the days that kids went out and played all day. And was riding my bike and heard a loud sound, a screech. And I said, that sounds really close to me, but maybe not. And then I felt the impact. And a lady who was driving her car lost control, going about 40 miles an hour, and ran up on the curve and hit me on my bike. I proceeded to fly somewhere between 30 and 40 feet, landed on a little patch of grass, and when I see that cross up there, I'm so thankful, because the good Lord spared my life that day. Every time I'm in Phoenix, I go to that spot. And that's one of the things I want to share with you today, among others, is you got to recognize you got to go to that spot. So many times, tough times happen in our lives, and we run away from. But the reason why I go back to the spot, because if you go back to the spot of pain in your life, it really produces goodness, as Paul talks about, gratitude, being thankful. But so many times in life we want to move beyond from the scene of the accident. We want to send this message that our lives are perfect. They're not. That's why I go back to the scene of that accident, because it's a reminder that I shouldn't be here. So at 10 and a half years old, I recognize how fragile life is, how fortunate I was, and that there is a God. And as I laid there on the ground in severe pain, getting put in an ambulance, going from one hospital to another, I had a lot of injuries, but the main one is that I broke my right femur. And just last week, I went to TCO, because I always support family, to get checked because, my back's a little sore, my leg's a little sore, so they measured my leg. My right leg is off, it's shorter than my left. So they sent me to a cobbler in town, who's going to build me a shoe to help. But when they did the x-rays at TCO, he said, your bone is healed, but it was twisted a little bit. It healed. You've made it so far. We're not going to re-break it. Now we just got to kind of balance your gait out a little bit. You're going to be fine. But on that day, I'm so grateful that I made it. But it was during that journey that I promised God that if He let me live, that I was going to do everything I could to make the world a better place, to give and provide as much goodness as Paul preaches to the world. So it was in that hospital room where they reset my femur, they put me in traction, and I thought that's where it all ended until the doctor told me you got to go into a full body cast. So I spent weeks in traction and months in a body cast. There were two people, a lot of people, but two special people who really brought me through that journey. And that was my mom and my sister Marilyn. And this is where I want to spend a little time with. Just focus on those two people. My mother had a lot of pain in her life. Her father left home when she was in 8th grade. She never saw him again. Grew up in the projects. Was so poor one year they actually lived in a tent in Phoenix, lived outdoors. She was valedictorian of her class, went to college, got a master's, raised a family. But it was in her pain growing up where she was really able to transfer so much goodness to me. And in that hospital bed also, who would lay on the bed with me so many times at night to pray over me and for me, was my sister Marilyn. And so one of the things I want to ask you all today, I want to leave you with this question, is who are those people in your life who would spend months sleeping in chairs, sleeping on the floor, not sleeping in your hospital room? Why is that important? Because if you haven't gone through difficulty in your life already, you will. I'm a big believer, either a storm is coming toward your life, you're in a storm, or you just got out of a storm. And then it stalls all over again. So as you go through life again, ask yourself, who are those people that when you're flat on your back like I was, who are going to stay in that hospital room with you? So after I was able to get through traction, get the body cast on me, they took me home. And that's where really I was struggling mentally. 10-and-a-half-year-old boy, active, in my room. My parents had to work, so they would actually leave me for periods of time throughout the day. And I tell people, you haven't lived until you can say that you've had to go to the bathroom in a bedpan, or you've been flat on your back. And I would ask you, just for one day, drink all of your fluids, eat all of your meals, laying flat on your back. That's what I had to do for months. So that's one of the reasons why I have a positive attitude, one of the reasons why I love Paul Botts so much. It's because when he talks about goodness, it was really goodness that saved my life. The goodness of my mom, the goodness of my sister, the goodness of so many people around me who told me I can make it. So when I got out of the body cast, I looked at my body, and all I did was sob. And so fortunately, we did get a legal settlement. So I went to my parents after my last doctor visit, after I asked the doctor, what could I do to recover? And the doctor told me, your life probably won't be the same. You probably won't be able to participate in athletics, for sure, not competitive athletics. But to give you the best chance to have somewhat of a normal life. And he was right. He said, you're going to have pain in your life, your leg. When you get older, it's going to really hurt. He was right about that. But the thing he was wrong about is that he didn't know my heart. And he didn't know the goodness that my mother, my sister, my father, and others really laid over me. So I went to my parents and said, will you build a swimming pool? Because the doctor had said the best thing to help you recover would be if you swam. My parents said, we don't have the resources to do it. I said, well, I want to take a large chunk of my settlement and build a pool in our backyard. Fortunately, although my parents challenged me, but they allowed me to do it. So I built a pool in our backyard. I swam every day. I did water aerobics before that was popular. I worked out hard. And about 7 years later, at the age of 17, I became a Division I basketball player. And it all started with goodness, even in pain. So I really want to challenge everyone today. Don't run from pain, run to it. Ask yourself, who are those people in your life who would sleep in a chair, sleep on your bed, sleep on the floor, not sleep when you need them the most? It's so important to recognize that we all are the average of the 10 people we spend the most time with. If you make a list of the 10 people you spend the most time with and average their attributes, that's who you are. So in this world, it's important to be around good people, to be around balanced people, to be around people who are going to sleep in those chairs and eat hospital food and encourage you. That's so important. Every day's not a sunny day. And I was just honored that when my sister called me probably 15 years later, she was struggling in her life. And she called me and said, "Kevin, I need you." She was living in South Bend, Indiana. People ask me all the time, why did I go to law school at Notre Dame? They look for some great story. I said, because I had a sister who was sick. So I went to law school at Notre Dame, lived in her basement, cared for her 2 young kids who were 3 and 5 at the time, who ironically are both lawyers now. That's what I call spiritual synchronicity. Is when you have an opportunity to do good or receive good, and then you pay good forward, good things happen. Goodness does pay. I'm a living testament. I wouldn't be here with you today but for so many people in my life who spread their love, their encouragement, who slept in chairs, who slept on the floor, but most of all, who told me I can do it, and told me and taught me the importance of what Paul is teaching right now, is that goodness does pay. So to all the young leaders out there, I'll leave you with this. Set standards, non-negotiables for your life, for your friends, for your goals, for your decisions. And don't waver. Even when the heat is on you, don't waver. Do the right thing. Do what's wise. But most of all, to the young leaders, recognize the importance that goodness will have in your life. Thank you for the time, and God bless you all. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. You can have a seat right there. Thank you, Kevin. We actually want to hear from you. If you've got a question you want us to ask Kevin, there will be a short interview here coming very shortly. I've got a couple of friends I'm going to ask a few questions of here now. But you can use the device. We have an open poll. Bo's going to monitor that following the meeting here when the live stream is complete. I'm going to do an interview with Kevin for 30 to 35 minutes, and we'll turn that into a podcast. So we'll try to make sure that any of the questions that you ask that we'll get to eventually. I have a couple of friends here, Gile and JT. Giles making her way up here first, ladies first. So Giles just finished a term as the president of the student body at the University of Minnesota. She was born in Nairobi. She's lived all over the United States. Says she's a self-professed sports fan. I'm asking Giles to tell us, what is the most impressionable thing that you heard from Kevin?
Yeah, I think there's many things that I heard today that I think were really impactful, but he discussed the importance of knowing where God has placed you. And at birth, I was actually born with acid and almost lost my life. But knowing what has gone on right now and how I was able to lead the student body, my mother told me, you were called to such a time as this, similar to how Queen Esther was called. And I think remembering why you're in a place and what you're meant to do there and the goodness that you can spread and what you can do to help others, that servant leadership is so important to me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
JT grew up here in Minneapolis. He was a multi-sport star at De La Salle. He is currently on the football team that's not playing at the moment at Cornell. He's starting cornerback. And he's the first student in the history of Cornell University to actually be a voting member on the Board of Regents. That's spectacular. What did you hear from Kevin that was most impressionable for you?
So first, I just want to thank you, Mr. Botch, for this amazing event, and Mr. Warren for speaking, and all the sponsors and everyone here. But really what I heard was, remember the spot. Go back to the spot. Don't run from the pain. Go towards the pain. And I think as young leaders and experienced leaders in the room today, we're living that right now, right? With the murder of George Floyd happening right in our city, I think it's easy to kind of try to forget about that pain, forget about the problems we have in our country and our world right now, the fact that we're going through a pandemic. But we can't run from it as leaders, especially young leaders, because we're the ones who are going to change this.
Right.
So go toward it. Remember that pain, and that's going to ensure that it never happens again, and we really change things for the better. And just remembering to never waver with your non-negotiables. And I think that's what I've learned from a lot of the great mentors and leaders that I have in my life, but especially Mr. Warren with the decisions he's making now. So do the right thing, and remember to go toward the challenge and opportunities.
Thank you both for being here. Really appreciate it. So, Kevin, we only have a short time for an interview here. This paper, I mean, you're into football. You're the commissioner of the Big Ten. You canceled this. Now you're on the front page of papers all over the place. What's the hardest part about this job?
I think the hardest part is that, recognizing the number of constituents that you have. And in my current job, we have our chancellors and presidents, our athletic directors, all of our coaches, our head coaches, our assistant coaches, our staff members, faculty athletic reps, senior women administrators, our student athletes.
How many of those?
We had 10,000 student
10,000.
athletes. And then the biggest area is the fans.
Yeah.
And so just trying to make sure that decisions that you make, the decision is the most important thing, but the message I've learned last week is the communication of the decision is as important. And I'm always, you know me well enough to know you've helped to teach me this. I'm the first one to raise my hand and said, even as you talked about your grandmother, the moment you stop learning, the moment you stop living. So I learned. I'm confident we made the right decision. Maybe the first round of communication wasn't the best, but hopefully the second round was best, but I learned. And so when the next opportunity comes up, that's when you have that from a playbook standpoint to say, okay, I knew what happened last time, don't do that this time. And I think that's what, especially to the young people, have to recognize. So many people don't become great because they're scared to fail. But that's why I embrace my accent so much. That's when I recognized was living here, was here for a purpose. And then I want to empower our young people to recognize that it's not, the problem is not in the failure. The problem is really in the effort.
Yeah.
But if you go through pain and you learn from it, and you're still standing, you'll be able to teach others, and you'll be able to do better next time.
Fabulous. Hey, Bo.
Yes.
Do you have a question for us?
Absolutely. The great questions coming in. Thank you, both live audience and those watching in the broadcast. One question here. In your role as the Big Ten Commissioner, how do you spread positivity in your organization?
That's a great question. I mean, I try to follow the attributes that good leadership stands for. I mean, just from, hard work, leadership, generosity, positivity, You know, it's been interesting for me. I started last September 16th during a transition period as commissioner-elect. After Jim Delaney was retiring after 31 years, you know, January 2nd, I remember that day. I go out to Pasadena, watch the Rose Bowl there, Wisconsin and Oregon. It was an absolutely spectacular night. You know, one of those Southern California nights, just spectacular. Stars, although Wisconsin didn't win, but it was a good game, but a spectacular night. Sat out there, did the interview. They passed the baton toward me on January 2nd, was really on top of the world. And needless to say, I didn't know that about 75 days later that I would be then handed the opportunity and the challenge to run, you know, a multi-billion-dollar company in a pandemic with people all around the country, basically operating on Zoom and Microsoft Teams and cell phones during a pandemic. And I think that's one thing that people have failed to realize. Although we're in the sports business, we're in a pandemic. So that's been a challenge, but it's been a good challenge. And so I think that's been the biggest thing is to recognize, you know, the time that we're in right now, but to be a sturdy and strong leader, just like I've had to show my entire life, but especially the last couple of weeks, and because people feed off of that energy.
Yeah. Do you have one more question?
Absolutely. Just kind of staying in that realm of spreading positivity and core principles of good leadership, which of the 7 F's are you focusing on now during all of these challenges from COVID?
I mean, all of them. I could give a entire 5-day seminar on the 7 F's, especially during this last 10 days. But, you know, it's interesting. I always, and I've told this story before, you know, prayed. But I remember, one thing I remember about my mom, every time I would go into her room at night, she was on her knees praying. And then, you know, it's interesting, I'm so grateful that I married an incredible, splendid wife in Greta. So from the day that we got married, she said her prayers at night on her knees. And it wasn't until about 5 years ago, 3 to 5 years ago, that I started praying on my knees. And I'll tell you this, the last couple of weeks, I've even laid on my face. And so I'm being totally honest. So all of the 7 F's, I mean, from a faith standpoint, you know, has grown because, and you know, I recognize that. My sister sent me a note earlier this week. That's where God wants us. You know, he really wants us dependent totally. And I literally had to say, Lord, I'm just following your steps. So my faith, you know, I was up at 4:30 this morning on my Peloton bike by 5:15 to get my workout in this morning because I had a 7 o'clock call. So all of them, my fitness, my faith, finances, you know, the family, the friends. I haven't had much time for friends lately, but all of them. So I just think it's important, you know, if you want your life to be simple, then you can make sure your 7F will is all at a 1 or a 2. But if you really want to follow the voice of God, you know, stretch it there. And so fortunately, I think Paul will tell you, he knows me as well as anyone, I try to stay as balanced, but all of them. I focus not one or the other, I focused on all of the 7 F's, and it really is special. I think about them every day.
Yeah. We could go on forever.
Yeah.
We have a message now from our friend Julie Mcdonough, who normally is my co-host, but she couldn't be here today.
Hi, Kevin and Paul. I'm sorry I'm not there with you in person today. This breakfast is always so inspirational, and of course, Kevin, you are always an inspiration to get to hear from. On behalf of my employer, Bremer Bank, we have $500 to donate to the charity of your choice. Can you tell us where to send the check and why?
So where should we send the check, Kevin?
I would say the Warren Family Foundation. We actually, you know, my daughter Perry, who's not here, she lives in Chicago with us, not with us, but in a downtown about a mile from us. But she runs our Warren Family Foundation, doing some incredible things in the school system there. We adopted a school, Dewey Elementary, and we're actually having a back-to-school program here coming up for the 35 8th graders who are going to high school to be able to send them back to school, whether virtual or non-virtual, so to go to good use to continually pass goodness. So thank you, Paul, so much, and you'll be passing goodness not only to the people here in the Twin Cities, but the kids who really need it in Chicago.
Yeah, fantastic. You can stay there. We're going to say thank you to you.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Bo, how much money did we raise?
We have a very generous audience. Thank you again to those watching and everyone in the room. We raised $1,260, and with the match from Mark Bergman, that's $2,520 going to the Southern Poverty Law Center.
That's fantastic. Now we have a message from one of our past speakers.
Hi friends, my name is Lindsay Riley, and I was the speaker at the first Good Leadership Young Leaders Breakfast in 2018. That was such a fantastic experience, and I'm so pleased to speak with you again today. My message that day was about courage and perseverance. At age 12, I went from dancing and playing sports one day to completely exhausted the next, only later to find out that I had a rare, life-threatening blood disorder that caused my body to stop making life-sustaining blood cells. The fact that my brother was a perfect bone marrow donor match saved my life, but the recovery process was long and difficult. I'm grateful to say that today I'm fully recovered and inspired to give back even just a fraction of the great care that I received in my time of need. I'm now working to be a leader at Mcdonough, where my work saves lives by providing medical technologies and therapies that alleviate pain, restore health, and extend life for the patients that we serve. I'm married now with 2 great children and living out the purpose and the goals that I dreamed of when I was younger. Like you heard from Kevin Warren today, adversity helps you learn who you really are and what your hopes and dreams are for the future. We are all living through adversity now with the challenges of COVID and racial injustice. And now is a great time to invest in your personal growth as a leader. So now I have a challenge for you. The resources of Good Leadership are incredible. They help people like you and me be the best that we can be. I want you to consider taking the Good Leadership Challenge. It's a series of 5 exercises that will help you learn and grow and see how you can carve a better path forward. It starts by taking the Goodness Pledge. I'll read it for you. The world needs me to be a good leader who radiates goodness today. I choose to be happy because what we concentrate on grows. I will blend the 7 F's into my work so that I can live with less stress and lead with less fear. I will role model good leadership by rewarding excellence, living generously, promoting fairness, and spreading positivity. And I promise to build on the goodness in others so that we can thrive together. The challenge is good for leaders of all ages. To get started, visit goodleadership.com/challenge. It's a great way to get on the path to radiating goodness every day, because our world needs you to be a good leader today. So carpe diem, go seize the day.
I spoke at the very first time we organized the young leaders, and we had 115 of them in the room that day. It was a spectacular breakfast, and we'd hoped to repeat that, and then of course COVID. What we have for you is a toolkit. It's full of the same exact tools we use when we coach our CEOs and emerging leaders. It's free. And it's got a set of instructions and some wonderful materials that help you. And I would encourage you, any of you in large organizations, you can spread this across the whole organization. Any of you that are on your own, that are trying to get better, you can do this with a friend. This is our gift to you for being supportive and being invested in this idea of goodness and good leadership. When you complete the Good Leadership Challenge, we're going to send you a certificate, and you can post it on LinkedIn or something like that, right? So as we head for home today, I just want to remind you all the information we shared is based on the research we did. We're really grateful to Cargill U.S. Bank to help us get that work done. We have a video recording of this particular meeting with a lot of the things that were, dead air stripped out. That'll be ready for you early next week. In addition to that, we'll share with you the podcast that we'll be recording with Kevin here in about 15 minutes or so. So as we head for home, I just have something that I'd like to share that I think can help us all. It's summer in Minnesota for another few days. And then we know it's autumn, and then we know what comes after that. It's the dead of winter. And I'm profoundly worried about how we're going to react to winter all over this land in a pandemic. And I think it makes sense for you to use some of the tools and resources we shared with you today. If you think about improving your satisfaction on the 7 F's every single day, it's going to help you push back the dark noise. It's also going to help you surround yourself with people who are going to make you better, because we're going to need it. I also think it's a really good idea. As much as we love our big box retailers and stuff we can buy online, I need you to think about our small businesses. We cannot thrive together as a society without strong small businesses. Good leadership is a small business. The fact that you're here and supporting this is helping us stay alive and keep people employed. If you remember to build on excellence, generosity, fairness, and positivity, we believe people will follow you. The world needs us to be good leaders right now. Goodness pays because goodness grows. It's contagious. So can you do that? Can you be the one that spreads it? Yeah. I think so. So carpe diem, do it right now. Thank you very much and goodbye.